Hey there, nation. Welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and now it's time for another edition of our longest war. This is our series of Warhammer 40,000 battle reports. This is a battle report number 7. It is a 1,000 point battle that is fought between my Astra Militarum of my Necromunda Penal Corps versus my buddy Sergeant Sigmarine with his Indomitus Crusades of the Space Marines. So that's right, ladies and gentlemen, this is battle report number 7. Now, if you're wondering what happened to battle report number 6 for the longest war, in case you haven't been keeping up with what's going on my channel lately, what happened was that the iMac that I do all of my video editing on basically crashed. The video card just went kind of kaput, unfortunately. So because of that, a lot of the materials that I made ahead of time, because I was about a month ahead of schedule with all my videos productions being made, unfortunately those kind of went with the computer because I didn't back up my data, so because I was unable to access it. Luckily, though, my computer is in the shop. It should be back by next week, and I can relaunch the videos that I have missing on my computer. But until that time, though, I'm just going to carry on forward with making new videos and making new content, so that way you guys can see what we're doing for wargaming. So if you're wondering why the production value on this battle report is kind of low, the reason why is because I'm using a laptop that's 12 years old, and that's what I'm using to edit my videos on. So now you know. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's see exactly what happens when 1,000 points of Imperial Guard go up against 1,000 points of Space Marines. Let's get on to the deployment phase. All right, so let's go and talk about deployment real quick. As you can see, we are fighting on a 4x6 table. In terms of scenario rules, we haven't really been playing scenarios too much when it came to our battle reports, and the reason why is because my gaming group and I are still just getting used to using the rules and learning how our armies operate because we never played 40k before. So if you're wondering how come we never really do scenario rules too much on these battles, that's why, because we're still kind of learning how to use our armies and how to use the rules and stuff and getting comfortable and getting familiar with the game. It's the same reason why you don't see us using command points or stratagems at this point, because we're still just getting used to playing this game. So if you're wondering how come we haven't done that in a while, that's why. So as you can see here, we're just fighting on a 4x6 table. Both of us have just a linear deployment. My buddy Sergeant Sigmarine has deployed his forces on the near side of the table, while my forces for my Necromunda Penal Colony Corps are located on the far side of the board. Pretty much we're just kind of throwing it down at 1,000 points and seeing exactly what happens. We're just fighting until one player either gets completely tabled or until the other one can seize the game. So with pretty much the scenario rules over with, let's go and talk about exactly what we're bringing and where all our forces are deployed at. So first up on my left-hand deployment, as you can see in the top of the MTI terminal, I have my very first infantry squad. It is a 10-man squad that has a flamer as well as a last cannon in that group as well. That's part of my second platoon, which is Mason's Marauders. It's more of my suppressive element. So these guys are just kind of camping up in the top of the tower, so that way they could put down some long-range fire of that last cannon to my opponent's left-hand flank. So that makes up the deployment here on the top of the tower. Down below on my left-hand flank is where the rest of Mason's Marauders are located at. As you can see, I have two infantry squads. On the left-hand side, I have my Sleeping Dogs, as well as my Pelago Slam Kings on the right-hand side. Both those units are pretty much outfitted the same. Both units have last cannon heavy weapons teams. They also have a flamer for a special weapon. Right behind them, of course, on the left-hand side, I have Judge Mason. That is the platoon commander for the second platoon. And then right behind him, on the right-hand side, kind of like in the center of the frame, right behind that forest, you have Commander CheapSkate, who's my company commander, as well as my two fire support officers. One is a Master Artillery, I believe it's called Master of Artillery, I believe was what the guy's called. He's the guy who can bring in artillery barrages, and the other one is a fleet officer who can also do airstrikes. And then right there in the middle of the forest there, which is newly completed by our resident terrain master, Iron Major, we have my one-hit wonders. That's a 6-man special weapons squad. 3 members of that team are armed with sniper rifles. And that pretty much makes up my left-hand flank for my army for this battle report. Alright, so continuing on with my deployment here in the center portion of my table, I have my People Eaters. That is my huge unit of 20 conscripts. That's who those guys are. Right behind them, of course, I have Judge Fear. That is my Lord Commissar. He's located in that unit, so that way he can give his summary execution ability if he needs to. Also on the right-hand side, I got my platoon commander for this unit, which is Colt Commando, Gosling's Goons. He's the guy who's in charge of the conscripts as well as the one-hit wonders, which are my sniper team, and they're making it my center lines. And finally, making my right-hand flank, I have my last 2 platoons in my army. On the left-hand side, I got my my third platoon, that's Colt's Commandos. That is the maneuver element for my army. These guys are a little bit lighter equipped, so that way they can do more movement and also engaging my opponent, kind of like an assault element. Excuse me. kind of like an assault element for my army. As you can see, I have my iron sights as well as the killjoys up front. Those guys are packing heavy bolters for their heavy weapons. And then, of course, I have Judge Cold back there as well. That's the platoon commander for this unit. And then right behind him, I have my jury. The other half of my jury, those guys are also packing heavy heavy bolt gun as well. And then also located within this unit as well is my second Lord Commissar, so that way he can use his summary execution ability to make sure these guys don't run. And on the very far right-hand side, I have my first platoon, which is Drake's Destroyers. These are where my elite choices are located at. Right in the center, on the right-hand side in the back, that's my Suicide Squad. It's a 10-man veteran squad. They got a missile launcher, heavy flamer, as well as a flamer in that unit. And then, of course, you have Judge Drake, who's in the middle of the formation there, who's another platoon commander. And then right in front of him, I have two 6-man special weapon squads. On the left-hand side, those guys are armed with flamers. And on the right-hand side, those guys are armed with plasma guns. And that makes up my right-hand flank for this battle. So with deployment for the Imperial Guard done, let's go and talk about my opponent's Sergeant Sigmary for his Indomitus Crusade. Making up his left-hand flank, as you can see, he's got 2 units located there on the other side of the walkway. Up front, he's got a 10-man tactical squad of Space Marines. Those guys are equipped with a plasma cannon for their heavy weapon choice, as well as a plasma rifle. And then right behind them, he has his Librarian as well. So that guy's kind of taking up the back and having his tactical Space Marines making up his assault forces here on the left-hand flank. And making up Sergeant Sigmary's center line is where most of his forces are located at. This is where he has most of his Primaris Space Marines. Up in the front, he has a 5-man Intercessor squad. Those guys are armed with bolt rifles. Right behind them, of course, right in the middle, he has his Primaris Captain, who is equipped with Gravis armor. He also has the Boltstorm Gauntlet, as well as a Master-crafted Power Sword. And then right behind him is another 5-man squad of Hellblasters. Those guys are armed with Plasma Incinerators. I'm pretty excited to see exactly what these Primaris Space Marines can do in terms of like what they can possibly throw at my army. This is the very first time I'm actually fighting against Primaris Space Marines. I fought against Chaos Space Marines, so I'm kind of familiar with what Space Marines as a whole can do in terms of having really good range attacks and really good close combat attacks, having really good armor saves, but I never went up against Primaris yet, so I'm excited to see exactly what these guys can do, and I'm looking forward for the challenge of taking these guys out as well. And that pretty much makes up Sergeant Sigmary's center line for his deployment area. And finally, make up the deployment on his right-hand flank. He's got another assault element up front. He's got 3 attack bikes. I'm sorry, not attack bikes, just regular guys on bikes. Those guys are armed with twin-link bolt guns. I believe one of the guys is also packing a plasma gun as well. And then right behind them, he's got 3 interceptors. And those guys are like the little jump pack assault guys, and they're armed with assault bolters, a pair of assault bolters for each of them. And that makes up his right-hand flank for this battle report. So with deployment over, we go directly to top at turn number 1 for the Astra Militarum. I managed to secure the initiative on this round, and as you can see, for the most part, not many of my forces really move. I'm Imperial Guard. I really can't stand toe-to-toe with Space Marines too much when it comes to close combat, so pretty much what my goal is kind of like to spread out my forces into like a major firing line, hopefully whittle down his forces by the time he does engage with me, and by that time, I just kind of mop up whatever's left over with just sheer numbers. So as you can see, for my left-hand flank, for my second platoon, as well as for my sniper team and for my commanding units, I just keep them exactly where they're located at because there's no real reason for those guys to move. They guys have last cannons, and I really don't want to suffer the -1 to hit for the roll because those guys moved, so I just pretty much keep them right where they're at. However, my maneuver elements, which consists of my third platoon as well as my first platoon, I maneuver those guys up forward. I just move them up their normal 6 inches. So as you can see there, Cold's Commandos, those guys move up 6 inches as well. Same thing with Gosling's Goons for my 20-man conscription squad. I move those guys up as well as their attending officers as well, so that way they can issue out orders. I just move those guys up their normal 6 inches so that way they can start engaging targets with their last guns. On the right-hand side, however, I do advance with my first platoon guys, which are my Suicide Squad, as well as my 2 6-man weapons teams. And as you can see in the top there on the right-hand side, I got my 2 special weapon squads on top of the MCI Chemical Works, and then right behind them, I have my Suicide Squad bringing up support and Overwatch. Here's a close-up of my conscripts as well as my third platoon moving up 6 inches forward with their attending officers, so that way they can start shooting at my opponent's primary Space Marines as well as his assault elements on the right-hand flank. And here's a close-up shot of my 2 special weapons squads occupying the MCI Chemical Work fuel tank towers, and also you can see my 10-man Suicide Squad also kind of moving up to the base of that chemical work as well to land Overwatch. And finally, here is a close-up of my left-hand flank with my second platoon, as well as my snipers and my command units. Those guys just stay in place because they're going to plan on putting some long-range fire onto my opponent's left-hand flank. And that pretty much makes the movement phase. So with movement phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase, and the very first thing I do is start issuing out orders. Alright, so the orders here on the left-hand side, I use Commander CheapSkate as well as my platoon commander as well to start issuing out orders to these units. These units are being activated as my second platoon members. I give that order what's called Take Aim, which allows you to re-roll hit rolls of 1. So if I roll a 1 for the hits that I make for my units, I get to re-roll that one and try to get a second chance at making a successful hit, which is kind of important because I have last cannons in these units, and that's going to make it really, really important for me to use those last cannons effectively against my opponent's infantry units as well. And so those are the orders I issue out here on the left-hand side of my army. And over here on the right-hand flank, I issue out some more orders with my platoon commanders to the 3 infantry squads that are making up Colt's commandos. And that order I use is Bring It Down, which allows me to re-roll to wound rolls of 1. So in case if I kind of flow my rolls and roll a bunch of 1s, I get to re-roll those and try to bring down those Space Marines. Those guys have toughness 5 on those assault bikes, so I need all the help I can get to make sure I can take those guys down with the damage of my last guns. And that pretty much sums up the orders that I issue out to my troops on this part. So in the end, I did manage to kill one of the assault bikes that are located within that unit of 3 bikers that are heading towards my right-hand flank. I managed to kill one of those guys as well as put a floating wound onto another bike as well. Unfortunately, I was unable to use any of my shots to go against the interceptors because I was just concentrating one squad after another trying to take out those bikes first. So that was kind of demoralizing. But then again, I am using strength 3 weapons against toughness 5 assault bikes, and those things have 2 wounds apiece, so I can take what I can get at this point. Meanwhile, here in the center portion of the table, I only managed to kill one of the Intercessor Primaris Space Marines, and that was after concentrating all the fire of my conscripts against that unit as well. I was just spamming my rolls really bad, and I was unable to hit or to wound much of anything at that point. However, I did manage to inflict 2 wounds onto the Primaris Captain, and that's because my one-hit wonders managed to get those shots off and managed to hit that character as well, so that part was pretty awesome. However, the most glorious aspect of my shooting phase took place here on the left-hand side. As you can see, that 10-man squad of guys just kind of evaporated at that point. And the reason why is because of my last cannons. My last cannons were able to hit the targets and cause a lot of damage that way. Plus the combined fire from all those infantrymen. I was also rolling a bunch of 5s and 6s like I couldn't, like I was going out of style. Having that ability to re-roll 1s, which is Take Aim, really helped me out for this part. Because I did roll a decent amount of 1s on this part, but because I got to re-roll those 1s when I re-rolled them quickly became 5s and 6s, so that really helped out as well. Because I don't have a charge phase going on, and plus I don't do any close combat, we go immediately to the morale phase, and unfortunately for my buddy Sergeant Sigmary, the 2 Space Marines he had left, those guys fled off the table, and so because that, the only guy that's left on his left-hand flank is his Librarian. My opponent just kind of flubbed his morale tests on that part. And so because of that, that ends up turn number 1 for the Astra Militarum. And with that being said, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Space Marines. And as you can see from this photo, he starts engaging his forces onto the right-hand flank as well as the center portion of the table. On his right-hand side, he moves up his interceptors onto the top of that MCI Chemical Works tower, getting within good position to kind of set up a good charge for the charge phase. At the same time, he also moves up his bikes their maximum amount of distance, and he also used the special rule I believe is called Jinx. That's where you can use 6 inches to add to your advance roll, and he moves within 3 inches of my very first unit of infantrymen, my Killjoys, so that way he's within good range to open up with his assault weapon, and then he can charge into during his next charge phase as well. Meanwhile, for the rest of his forces, especially with his Primaris Space Marines as well as his Librarian, all he really does, he moves those guys up kind of cautiously. They're up their normal 6 inches as well. That puts him well within range for him to open up with those bolt rifles and manage to get multiple shots with the rapid fire rule, and also puts him within good striking distance for his Hellblasters as well. So kind of worried to see exactly how much firepower those guys can bring out when they start shooting in the shooting phase. And finally, on the left-hand side, as you can see, his Librarian is positioned in such a way to where he is getting full cover from those standing stones there on the left-hand side, so my last cannons cannot target him. And at the same time, the way he's positioned next to that walkway there on the right-hand side, he's also screened from any incoming fire as well. So he does that to protect his Librarian. And that pretty much makes it the movement phase for Sergeant Sigmary's Space Marines. And here's a quick close-up of the right-hand flank because when I took my overhead shot, it kind of cut off this image. So as you can see, his interceptors are getting ready to engage my two six-man fire teams for my special weapon squads, and his two bikes are getting ready to charge into my infantry squad as well. So that way you guys can see exactly what's going on here on the right-hand side. During the psychic phase, my opponent takes his librarian and uses, I believe it's called Might of Heroes is the name of the psychic ability. What that does, it gives a +1 to the strength, toughness, as well as the attack characteristics for any Space Marine unit within distance or within range of that spell. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm still used to calling these psychic abilities spells just because I'm more of a fantasy player more than I am a 40k player. So it's kind of weird. It's just interesting to see that magic it plays a role within this futuristic warfare game. But anyways, so my opponent takes a psyker, manages to get that spell off. Sorry, not that spell. That psychic ability off onto that unit of intercessors, making them very, very strong and also way, way tough, and also makes them very, very deadly in close combat as well. And that pretty much makes up his psychic phase on this right-hand side. And then finally, during the psychic phase, his librarian targets my conscription squad, my people leaders, manages to kill 3 of them with a psychic ability called Smite. And what that does, it causes D3 mortal wounds, kind of like the arcane bolt spell from Age of Sigmar, except it's not a spell, it's a psychic ability, which is kind of weird to say that. But anyways, that's what happened for the psychic phase. So with psychic phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase. And as you can see from this photo, my opponent Sergeant Sigmarine had a very awesome shooting phase on the right-hand flank. As you can see, his 2 bikes had no problem chopping down 7 members of the Killjoys. Only got 3 of those gang members left over to kind of like stand their ground at that point. It was very, very devastating. And the reason why is because he was in the rapid fire range of both the twin-link bolters on his guns as well as his plasma gun as well. I believe my opponent opened up with his twin-link bolt guns. He also opened up with his plasma gun rapid fire, and I believe his sergeant for that unit also threw a frag grenade as well, just kind of cut down that unit down to its more basic size. And at the same time, my opponent's interceptors down the right hand side targeted my special weapon squad armed with flamers and just wiped that unit right off the table, killed all 6 of my special weapon squad members like it was nothing. It was very, very devastating to see that take place. However, the worst of the shooting took place here in the center of the table. As you can see, my huge unit of people leaders, my once 20-strong conscription squad, has now been reduced to 3 guys. The combined fire from those intercessors with their rapid fire ability, because they're in half range of those bolt rifles, as well as those Hellblasters, as well as the Primaris Terminator Captain opening with his Bolt Storm Gauntlet, reduced that unit down to 3 guys. It was a miracle that none of my guys ran away during the morale phase. Actually, it wasn't a miracle. It was summary execution that kept my troops there as well. So they're still around, so there's a nice little inconvenient speed bump in pace. My buddy decides to charge forward with his intercessors. Those guys can kind of stop as a speed bump before he engages the rest of my army. But man, this shooting phase is absolutely devastating. I was just really surprised to see how much pain those Primaris guys can bring when it comes to shooting. During the charging phase, as you can see in this photo here on the right-hand side, those bikes had no problem charging into what's left of my Killjoys. At the same time, the interceptors on the right-hand side charged directly into my 2nd special weapons squad armed with plasma guns. Now, if you're wondering how come these Primaris interceptors are on that MCI chemical tank and not engage base-to-base contact with those special weapons squad guys on the right-hand side, the reason why is because there wasn't enough room for the models because the bases were so big. So because of that, just use the power of imagination and pretend that those interceptors are currently engage with my special weapon squad. And that pretty much makes it the charge phase on the right hand flank. Unfortunately for my buddy Sergeant Sigmarine, he did try to charge with the intercessors into my my conscription squad, but he was unable to make the distance on the roll off. And so with the charge phase over, we go directly to the combat phase. So this photo is taken after the combat phase as well as the morale phase. As you can see, my opponent's bikes had no problem sliding the rest of my Killjoys. He then does a quick 3-inch reconciliation move, kind of like a follow through. After eliminating that unit, engages his forces into my Iron Sights, which is my other 10-man infantry squad. So that's kind of rough. Also on the right hand side, you can see that his interceptors had no problem killing my 6-man weapon squad as well. Just brutally murdered those poor guys, and there they are relocated on the top of the MCI Chemical Work Tower. So with the combat phase and morale phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and we roll for initiative. And luckily for me, I managed to steal the initiative on this part, so because of that, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Imperial Guard. And this photo is taken after the move phase. As you can see, the first thing I do is I have my forces fall back as quickly as possible to disengage themselves and just put some distance between those bikes as well as those interceptors. Now, the reason why I'm able to do that is because as an Astra Militarum army, because these units fell out to disengage, I can also give them an order that will allow them to shoot even though they fell back in the last phase. And so because that's going to be really, really helpful to in the shooting phase, because now what happens is, as you can see my right hand flank there, my forces on my right hand side now are now into a 3-squad firing line, and that just kind of puts those interceptors as well as those bikes in perfect range for my rapid fire ability for my weapons to just kind of bring those guys down to size. And that pretty much makes the movement phase on for my army, because the rest of my army is just going to stay exactly where it's at, because I'm not too keen to engage those Primaris Space Marines. I want to shoot them up before they even get close to me. So with the movement phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase, and the very first thing I do is I start giving out orders to all my units. As you can see from my iron sights, I use the order get back into the fight, which allows Imperial forces that have retreated to be able to shoot in the shooting phase, so now my iron sights will be able to shoot. At the same time, I issue out the orders, first rank fire, second rank fire onto my unit of jury right there in the middle, as well as to my veteran squad there on the far right hand side. And what that ability does, first rank fire, second rank fire, what it does, it allows you to double the rapid fire ability of your last guns, and since these guys are within half distance of those guns, I'll be able to put out an impressive 3 shots apiece for each of my guys with their last guns. This could be very, very impressive, and hopefully just from the sheer number of shots that I'm throwing at these bikes, I can kill them that way as well. And that makes up the orders that are given here on the right hand flank. Meanwhile, here on the left-hand side, I issue out the take aim order to all 3 of my infantry units as well as to my sniper units as well, so that way they can start putting on some long-range fire onto those primary space marines, and hopefully I can whittle those guys down before they get within charging distance of me, and I don't have to worry about them destroying my guys in the assault phase. So with orders given out, it's time to go directly to the fallout of the shooting phase. And before I start shooting with any of my infantry forces, the very first thing I do is I take my Master of Ordnance and I have him use his, artillery barrage ability. And artillery barrage is kind of like a neat little system. That's why it's got that little orange disc there, so that way you can see what I did with that special ability. What that does, it gives you D6 shots with artillery barrages that hit your opponent. It also causes D3 wounds if you manage to pull that off. Luckily for me, I managed to hit him 5 times. He was unable to make 5 of those saves. And so because I think I issued out like 15, I think I did 15 wounds. Was it 15 wounds? Maybe it was 14. I forgot how many wounds it was, but needless to say, I was able to wipe out that unit of interceptors no problem with that artillery barrage, and that was very, very helpful because those guys were super deadly. The next thing I did with the shooting phase is I used my fleet officer's air raid requested ability as well to target the Primaris captain there in the middle of the table, and I managed to put 3 mortal wounds onto that guy as well, which is very, very awesome. Because the Primaris captain carries 5 wounds as a total, needless to say, I managed to kill that guy off right off the bat, which is really, really helpful because with his aura of command ability, he gets to allow his forces to re-roll ones in case they to hit. So that's really, really helpful for me as well to make sure that they lose that bonus as well. Shortly after using my barrage as well as my air raid attacks, I had all 3 of my infantry units target those 2 bikes. Needless to say, those guys had no problem wiping out those Space Marine bikers. Just the amount of sheer firepower that was thrown their way was enough to whittle down those units and manage to put the last 3 wounds I needed to kill those 2 bikes. And finally, with the combined fire of my second platoon with their last cannons, as well as the amount of last guns that they had, I managed to kill out those 4 remaining intercessors, I believe is what they're called, for the Primaris guys. Managed to wipe those guys off the face of the planet as well. I was rolling a bunch of 5s and 6s like I couldn't stop, so I got really, really lucky on that part as well. Also, my sniper team also managed to put a wound onto that librarian as well, so now that guy has 4 more to go before he dies. And because I have nobody charging and no one's engaged in close combat, we skipped the morale phase because it didn't really take any losses, because any units that did have losses, they already are dead. And so because that, we go directly to the bottom of turn 2 for the Space Marines. So as you can see on this perch, that pretty much takes us to the end of the game. My buddy Sergeant Sigmarine realizes the only thing he has left are his 5 Hell Blasters and his Librarian, and it's not enough to take on the rest of the military forces that he still has to deal with. So that, ladies and gentlemen, takes us directly to the end of the game. So with that being said, we're going to go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now officially over. All right, folks, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This ended up being a victory for Commander CheapSkate on this one, so just going to talk about some of the factors that led to that victory. First of all, the Order's ability really saved me in this battle report. It allowed me to really concentrate fire, also take advantage of re-rolling ones for misses, as well as really re-rolling ones for wounds, as well as having my forces be able to shoot when they fell back, as well as using rapid fire abilities, so that really helped me as well. Another thing that really helped me as well is that my opponent really couldn't cross the battlefield very, very quickly. And the reason why is because he didn't really have any vehicles, so he was just forced to make his guys advanced and try to get across the battlefield and try to engage me before I shot him to pieces as well. Another problem that he also ran into, of course, is that I really outnumbered him for 1,000 points. Because I have more forces, while they're not very strong and they're not very tough when they engage them in close combat, they're really, really good in the shooting phase, and that really helped me out a lot as well. However, with that being said, though, I still need to find some vehicles. I'm thinking about redoing my army list a little bit and adding some vehicles to this army because I do need more of those higher strength attacks because we have another player in my army, my gaming group, who plans on bringing Plague Marines onto the battlefield and playing Death Guards, so those guys are really hard to kill, so I need something to deal with that as well. As always, this was a very fun game. I had a very fun time playing against my buddy Sergeant Sigmarine. Looking forward for the rematch. That's pretty much going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Your guys' input is always appreciated. Also, check us out on Facebook, Google+, as well as Instagram and Blogger to see what exactly we're doing on the hobby side aspect of our game. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. We will catch you on the flip side. Peace out.